Shock and awe 20 years ago this month. I've seen a number of retrospectives 20 years later on the invasion and occupation of Iraq. And I have some thoughts about the whole fiasco. And it was a total fiasco, a catastrophe, and totally unnecessary. Remember, they told us weapons of mass destruction, and there were none. What did we gain from this? Zero. I was there. I was there as an embedded journalist. That's me on the right. I was with Fox News at the time and embedded with the 3rd Infantry Division. We left Kuwait and we went all the way in to Baghdad itself. And it was a tremendous, wild ride. I never expected to see the things that I saw, and I saw it all. I saw everything that you might think of when it comes to combat. Even took a little bit of metal in the face at one point. This was no big deal, but it was a really big deal when my parents saw it on TV. I basically needed a Band-Aid, and I was back in action about 10 minutes later. But I knew this war was unnecessary. I knew it. And I'll tell you specifically how. But it turned out the invasion, as intense as it was, well, that was only the warm-up, right? They never did treat us as liberators, did they? They didn't want us there. And with no weapons of mass destruction, we really had no business there. None. Zero. Before the war, before the invasion, some of the most credible voices in America were saying, and there were very few of them, oh, by the way, but the most credible ones, the experts like Scott Ritter, who at the time had extensive experience actually on the ground, being in Iraq, looking for weapons of mass destruction. I listened to this guy intensely, and here he is in August of 2002, some 6-7 months before the invasion.
Saddam Hussein is an awful man, a brutal dictator, and he is a scar on the world in terms of his morality. He represses his people, all of this. None of that is a case for war. None of that is justification for American military troops marching off to engage in combat. Until we can document that Iraq poses a threat to the national security of the United States, we shouldn't be talking about war with Iraq.
And we could not document that they were a threat without weapons of mass destruction. So they kept saying that and saying it and saying it. And then they tried to add to the story. And this is where I got very suspicious. George W. Bush gave a speech in Cincinnati in October of '02, and this line stood out to me.
The world has tried no-fly zones to keep Saddam from terrorizing his own people. And in the last year alone, the Iraqi military has fired upon American and British pilots more than 750 times.
Yeah, that got my attention because just 4 years earlier, I was one of the pilots flying over the southern no-fly zone of Iraq. And yes, there were the occasional pot shots taken at aircraft. But in 12 years of no-fly zones, not one American aircraft was actually shot down. They never hit one. I found that very suspicious that this would be the reason for invading Iraq. And it wasn't just Republicans, it wasn't just Bush, it was Democrats, including, Biden.
The only way we're going to get rid of Saddam Hussein is we're going to end up having to start it alone, and it's going to require guys like you in uniform to be back on foot in the desert taking taking Saddam down. You know it, and I know it.
Saddam is dangerous. The world would be a better place without him. But the reason he poses a growing danger to the United States and its allies is that he possesses chemical and biological weapons.
Mr. President, I will vote for the Lieberman-Warner amendment to authorize the use of military force against Iraq.
They all did, pretty much. It was the thing to do because they felt like fools when they voted the wrong way, some of them, on the first Gulf War. So they had to be really hawkish on this. And of course, no weapons of mass destruction. All those troops over there, all those American troops fighting, risking their lives, weapons of mass destruction. Remember, the war on terror. And just about everywhere we went in Iraq, instead of making friends, we made enemies. Don't tell me about the schools that we built. That's not why we went there. And quite frankly, we didn't make a dent in that society. No, we took so much from them and so much from us. And then George W. Bush joked about it. No weapons of mass destruction. And in 2004, he had to, I guess this is owning it, making light of it, making fun of the worst mistake in American history.
Those weapons of mass destruction got to be somewhere. Nope, no weapons over there. Maybe under here.
Not funny. It's outrageous. And now he has the nerve to wag his finger at MAGA and call us nativists. And well, he looks down on us because, well, he's a snob. And he conned a lot of people. So did this family with the pork rinds and, you know, the country music. You send so many people to war to get Saddam Hussein in part, right? Saddam Hussein's gone. But what about the weapons of mass destruction? You know, he was a bad guy. But it's like, let's say you have a neighbor who's a bad guy and you want him evicted. And instead of evicting one guy from one house, you destroy the entire neighborhood. That's what we did. And you know who called all of this out in the most dramatic, in-your-face way possible? And this is one of the reasons why I signed on very, very early. You know who.
Obviously, the war in Iraq was a big, fat mistake, all right? Now, you can take it any way you want, and it took Jeb Bush, if you remember at the beginning of his announcement, when he announced for president, it took him 5 days. He went back. It was a mistake. It wasn't a mistake. It took him 5 days before his people told him what to say, and he ultimately said it was a mistake. The war in Iraq, we spent $2 trillion, thousands of lives. We don't even have it. Iran is taking over Iraq with the second largest oil reserves in the world. Obviously, it was a mistake. So George Bush made a mistake. We can make mistakes, but that one was a beauty. We should have never been in Iraq. We have destabilized the Middle East.
So much truth in just a few seconds. There are aspects of the Republican Party who never even entertained any of the obvious truth, especially Jeb Bush. This might have been a fatal blow for Jeb as he's hearing the truth, hemming and hawing and shifting around. And yeah, he can't handle the truth. Literally, he can't handle the truth. Now, there is this one part of the story. They try to say, oh, Donald Trump is actually, he was for the war. Headline after headline, Donald Trump, it's a fact check, he's lying. He was actually for the war, for the war, for the war. That's actually not true. What they cite is an interview on Howard Stern in October of 2002, before the United States actually approved the resolution supporting the use of force. Listen to this exchange.
You for invading Iraq?
Yeah, I guess so.
Have you ever heard Donald Trump stutter in his life? This is on a radio show. This is the only clip we have. Yeah, I guess so. Can I hear it one more time?
Yeah, I guess so.
That's a man who has not made up his mind. He did say, oh, I wish we had done it right in 1991. A lot of people feel that way. So, and he said a lot of things when he wasn't on air. Remember, this man wasn't a senator. He wasn't voting on any resolutions for the authorization of the use of force. Donald Rumsfeld, at one point, the Secretary of Defense later, but he met with Saddam Hussein. What was the full extent of our relationship with Iraq over the years? I'd love to know the full story. And later, he became the Secretary of Defense. I wonder if it was his decision to hold back in Afghanistan because we knew Iraq was coming. Because after 9/11, we went to Afghanistan late and light. We gave Osama bin Laden and his friends a month and a half head start. and we didn't go in as heavy as we should have to get the guys who did this. Took us 10 years to find them. I believe because Iraq was the ultimate objective. Anyway, 20 years later, just some thoughts I wanted to share, and we'll be right back.